Ebrahim Raisi wins the presidential election in Iran amid low turnout. At least 27 people have been killed when a bus fell into an abyss in Peru. Hundreds of demonstrators have rallied in the streets of Rio de Janeiro calling for the resignation of the Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro. Hello and welcome to teleSUR. I'm José Daniel López in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. We begin in Peru, where at least 27 people have been killed and several injured when a bus fell into an abyss on an Andean road. A bus carrying miners fell into a cliff near the famous Nazca lines in the Ayacucho region. This is the second deadly accident to happen on the same road in the last 10 days. According to Peruvian media reports, the bus fell into a 450-meter abyss and bodies were scattered on the slopes of a hill in the desert area. Accidents have been happening in this area and have been attributed to poor road conditions, speeding, and lack of signaling.
The procedure is to be able to bring all the bodies to this area, order them, take them to the Puquio morgue, and mainly do the respective tests, alcohol levels, and all those tests on the driver.
Hundreds of demonstrators have rallied in the streets of Rio de Janeiro on Saturday, calling for the resignation of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. Activists critical of Bolsonaro's handling of the coronavirus pandemic had called for a nationwide protest across 300 Brazilian cities. Brazil's Senate is investigating how the coronavirus death toll got so high, focusing on why Bolsonaro's far-right government ignored opportunities to buy vaccines for months. On Friday, the official COVID-19 death toll in Brazil was about to hit 500,000, the second highest in the world behind the United States. The demonstrators were also against his economic policies. They say harm the interests of the poor and working class.
The fact that we are here all against Bolsonaro. We are not waiting for the next election. We want to remove him now. He's not good for one more minute in power. What comes next will certainly be much better than Bolsonaro. Opposition to the Bolsonaro government is extremely important. We are here not to die. The COVID-19 virus is less dangerous than the genocidal president.
The European Union's Special Envoy for Peace in Colombia has expressed the bloc's concern regarding the deaths of demonstrators during the national strike protests. European official Eamon Gilmore met with President Ivan Duque to express concern regarding the violent acts of the security forces and reiterated his commitment to ensure accountability for the serious abuses and human rights violations. Activists and NGOs have collected data on over 70 deaths, the majority of which are at the hands of the security forces. A new death was reported in the city of Cali precisely during Gilmore's visit.
I spoke to the president about the concern we have in Europe surrounding the death of demonstrators, and the president reiterated his commitment to ensure accountability and that the applicable reforms be implemented, and these issues will be addressed, and that everything triggering the demonstrations will be addressed. And we also spoke about the need and willingness to have a dialogue at the national, regional, and local levels.
The interim president of Peru, Francisco Sagasti, has condemned a call from retired soldiers of the armed forces to prevent the presidential candidate Pedro Castillo from eventually being proclaimed the winner of the June 6 runoff vote. Fears of a possible coup and calls for another election have emerged as losing candidate Keiko Fujimori continues to claim fraud.
What is unacceptable is that a group of retired people from the armed forces intends to incite the high command of the Army, Navy, and Air Force to break the rule of law. Yesterday, letters with only one signature and a list of names were presented to the General Commands of the Armed Forces and directed to the General Commanders and the head of the Joint Command of the Armed Forces, asking that they act against the Constitution and laws. As Constitutional President of the Republic, I reject this type of communication, which are not only contrary to democratic values and institutional framework, but are also acts at odds with the Constitution and the laws.
Nicaragua is 5 months away from holding presidential elections, and according to authorities, the country is under international pressure and the United States is trying to interfere in its internal affairs by financing opposition groups seeking to destabilize the country. Our correspondent Maria Jose Diaz has the story.
The country's streets are calm. Santos Eugenio Badilla Muñoz tells us that he was a victim of violence by opposition groups during the coup attempt in April 2018. He owned a business and has practically lost it. Now he's starting again.
I wish for the best, which is peace, as we have always fought and worked for the development of peace by supporting our projects that are already in place and that we cannot throw away for someone else to come and finish.
At the end of 2020, the Defense of the Rights of the Peoples to Independence, Sovereignty and Self-Determination for Peace Act was approved, a law that Nicaraguan authorities point out has been violated by opposition sectors that, despite promoting a smear campaign against the country's institutions, are getting ready for the next electoral process. In this alliance, we are firmly determined to select a presidential candidate with capacity, who generates confidence in the citizens, and we will not give up this objective. Political expert Freddy Franco explains that the most recent legal actions of the Nicaraguan authorities towards opposition sectors should be understood as an effort to defend national sovereignty in the context of the ongoing United States campaign to interfere in the country's internal affairs and destabilize it by financing opposition sectors in an attempt to oust the constitutional government of President Daniel Ortega.
The people and institutions that are being prosecuted in Nicaragua are being prosecuted because they have committed crimes. They have used that money for purposes other than those established by law. They have even hidden money. They have laundered money, and indeed you know that not only in Nicaragua, but at the international level there are laws, strong international legislations that fight organized crime, drug trafficking, money laundering, a series of crimes that affect international economic relations and the security of institutions and states.
According to recent investigations, the United States Agency for International Development allocated $5.2 million in 2017 to opposition groups in Nicaragua, which only 1 year later actively participated in the coup attempt of 2018.
Maria Jose Diaz, teleSUR, Nicaragua.
A 4-day summit for vaccine internationalism, sponsored by the Progressive International, has begun this Friday. The meeting is held virtually, and its goal is securing COVID-19 vaccines for all countries around the world. The summit brings together governments from the global south, political leaders, health workers, and vaccine manufacturers from more than 20 countries. During this summit, the foreign ministers of Bolivia and Venezuela and the head of ALBA bloc denounced the negative role of patents as an example of a flawed international economic order.
In the reflection process to which the search for vaccines has led us, we have noticed that at the moment there is not enough production capacity in the world to supply all those who need vaccines in a reasonable time. According to experts, we need to immunize 70% of the world's population to get out of the pandemic. And that is difficult when they are only produced by certain companies, because the vaccines have patents. There are other companies, public or private, that can produce them, but they can't do it because they don't have the licenses. We consider that COVID-19 exposed and laid bare the capitalist system, the model that was imposed, and it is the responsibility of those of us who are like-minded to be able to build that world, which is not only possible, of course it is possible, but it is essential, because neither Mother Earth nor humanity will be able to stand much longer this system that we laid bare, as we called it. Fortunately, in Venezuela, 98% of coronavirus cases have been treated in the public sector. We have coordinated well with the private sector, and of that total, 92% of the cases have recovered.
The head of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America stressed that the pandemic has underlined the health threats posed by neoliberalism.
The pandemic has undoubtedly exposed the way in which the neoliberal model works. The capitalist system, which accumulates capital, goods, and high-quality services in a handful of countries, and which is inherently incapable of resolving not only the pandemic, but also the global threats that humanity has to face. In a year and a half of pandemic, we have seen how not only the distribution of vaccines, but also of other goods to attend the pandemic have been subordinated and controlled by the neoliberal logic, and we have seen in a tangible way how this has taken its toll on human lives in different parts of the world.
More news in a minute. Stay with us.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough, and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomism. Monday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Iran's current judiciary chief, Ebrahim Raisi, has won the country's presidential election in a vote marked by a low turnout and calls for a boycott. By noon local time on Saturday, the long-serving conservative judge had won 62% of the votes, according to preliminary results released by the National Electoral Commission. With about 90% of the votes counted, Raisi had won 17.8 million votes, as reported by the head of Iran's Interior Ministry election headquarters, Jamal Orf. Raisi's rivals conceded defeat before even the final results were released.
Mr. Ebrahim Raisi took the first spot after winning 17,926,345 votes and was elected by the people's president, a trustee for the executive branch. Mr. Mohsen Razaen Mirgaer won 3,412,712 votes. Mr. Abdolnasser Emati won 2,427,201 votes. And Mr. Amir Sohain Ghazizadeh Hashemi won 999,718 votes. The rest of the votes are considered voided ballots, which are around 3,726,870 votes.
And hundreds of supporters of President-elect Ebrahim Raisi gathered in Tehran on Saturday evening to celebrate his landslide victory in the presidential elections. The crowd assembled on Imam Hussein Square, usually to the stage for religious ceremonies, and cheered Raisi's victory by holding his pictures and Iranian flags.
I congratulate all Iranians on this victory and those who participated in the elections and heeded the Supreme Leader's call. In fact, it is a victory celebration for everyone and does not belong to a particular group of people. Mr. Raisi is the elected president of all Iranians, and I wish him best of luck.
The people's turnout, in spite of the existing problems such as the coronavirus, propaganda of the foreigners, and their media outlets that tried to discourage people from voting in the elections. But with God's grace, people came and gave them a very firm response.
And leaders of the Hamas group in Gaza have congratulated the cleric Ebrahim Raisi for his victory at Iran's presidential election.
Hamas congratulates the Islamic Republic of Iran on the success of the democratic process represented in the holding of presidential elections and the victory of Ebrahim Raisi, president of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we wish the Iranian government and people progress and prosperity. Iran has always been a main, strong, and real supporter of the Palestinian resistance and our national cause.
Antonio Guterres is set to serve another 5 years as the Secretary General of the United Nations after the General Assembly elected him to a second term this Friday. Guterres was the only candidate for the UN's top position. The re-elected Secretary General of the 193 organization members faces a deeply divided world with numerous conflicts, the growing impact of climate change, and the coronavirus pandemic is still threatening the world. His re-election was met with a burst of applause from ambassadors in the Assembly chamber. 4 people have been killed and 15 injured after a plane carrying skydivers crashed in Russia's Kemerovo region. According to regional authorities, the incident occurred near Tanai airfield at around 10 a.m. local time, where a twin-engine L-140 plane carrying 19 people broke apart after a hard landing, and 4 of the injured are in severe conditions. The reason behind the crash is being investigated, Kemerovo authorities said in a statement. Russian President Vladimir Putin has pledged to prioritize growing the country's economy ahead of September parliamentary polls. Speaking during the ongoing ruling United Russia Party Congress, Putin said his government is set to spend millions of dollars on public transport, roads, infrastructure, and healthcare. He also said the state will be allocating payments and new forms of support for families starting next month. The Congress will determine the ruling party's candidates and electoral program for the lower house ahead of upcoming elections.
Разделяете то, что не получилось, ответственность за это несете. Обеспечивает стабильность, усилия по развитию экономики.
We must concentrate on all our efforts on this objective of developing the economy and the regions, the social field, health, education, on the strengthening of traditional values, understanding that the future in Russia is prosperous, family with children.
Political parties in Ethiopia are winding up campaigning for next week's presidential elections. The elections, which have been postponed twice, will mark the first test of voter support for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Africa's youngest leader and Ethiopia's first leader from the Oromia region. About 37 million Ethiopians have registered to vote on Monday, although many will have to wait until the second poll phase is scheduled for September due to logistical, legal, and security-related problems. The economic community of West African state leaders have converged in Ghana capital Accra for the bloc's 59th ordinary session. The regional meeting, being chaired by Ghana's President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, will discuss the outcome of the ordinary session of the ECOWAS Council of Ministers, which was held last Thursday in Accra. The officials will also discuss the post-COVID-19 industry recovery plan, the 2021 midterm report of the President of the ECOWAS Commission, and the ongoing institutional reforms, among other issues. Millions of families face serious food shortages in South Sudan due to flooding caused by climate change. Large tracts of South Sudanese land have been devastated after nearly 2 years of flooding due to continuous heavy rains. According to the World Food Programme, 1.4 million people have been internally displaced and over 7 million face food shortages from April to July this year. This organization said $3.7 million is urgently needed to recover the flooded area.
It is when you have given up of thinking scientifically, that's why you will say it's God. But to us, we say it is a global warming. I remember in 1960, 66, 67, we used to walk here from Bor on foot. And this was, now it is a different territory now.
You couldn't
I
walk
can't
that
believe it. I can't believe that was the soil that we used to work, or the land that we used to work when we were in elementary school in the 60s.
Wow.
It has totally changed.
And we have more stories coming up after one last break, so don't go away.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomy. Monday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Cuba has developed 5 COVID-19 vaccine candidates despite the huge limitations that the U.S. blockade imposes in the country. Over 2 million Cubans have already received jabs in the midst of the sanctions. The vaccination campaign began on May 12th in different cities across the island, with over 4 million doses now administered. The 2 most advanced vaccine candidates are Abdala and Soberana 02, which are in the 3rd phase of clinical trials. Cuba expects to announce the final results regarding the efficiency of the candidates as soon as possible, and will request authorization for the emergency use from health authority in order to extend the vaccination program to the entire population. The 2021 Copa America football tournament kicked off in Brazil last Sunday, and in less than a week, 65 people have been infected with COVID-19, including players, technical staff, and journalists. Since June 13, when the first match was held, a series of cases of players who tested positive for the virus have emerged. The South American Football Confederation explained that among the positive cases are stadium staff, the referee team, and even representatives of the sports organization itself. In April, China's Sinovac vaccine company donated 50,000 doses to the Confederation, which announced they will be applied to all the national teams and technical personnel. The decision to hold the tournament in Brazil sparked widespread condemnation and protest. A group of protesters have gathered at the venue of Japan's Tokyo Olympic Games to call for the cancellation of the event due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The demonstrators are concerned that the Games can be a hotspot for the spread of the virus, and they demanded the event to be cancelled. The Olympic Games are scheduled to start on July 23rd in Tokyo. However, Japanese residents are skeptical if there are going to be efficient safety measures during the biggest international sporting event as the pandemic continues to spread in the Asian country. The World Health Organization has warned that the COVID-19 pandemic continues to take in its toll on some of the world's poorest and most vulnerable people. WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus warned that it will be too late to donate vaccines next year. Ghebreyesus added that even after 18 months, the ineffective use of public health and social measures continue to give COVID-19 an opportunity to mutate, spread, and kill. In Africa, cases have increased by 52% just in the past week, and deaths have increased by 32%, while things are only likely to get worse.
Vaccines donated next year will be far too late for those who are dying today, or being infected today, or at risk today. Our global targets are to vaccinate at least 10% of the population of every country by September, at least 40% by the end of the year, and 70% by the middle of next year. These are the critical milestones we must reach together to end the pandemic.
But the brutal reality is that in an era of multiple variants, with increased transmissibility, potentially increased impact, we have left vast swathes of the population and the vulnerable population in Africa unprotected by vaccines in a context where health systems are already weak. That's the reality. And this is the consequence of the current unfair distribution of vaccines. If we had been distributing vaccines fairly and equitably, we may by now have protected those people most vulnerable on the African continent, and we simply have not done that.
Over 1,000 women from across Turkey have marched in Istanbul, urging President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to reverse his decision to withdraw from an anti-violence treaty. Protesters on Saturday chanted slogans including "We will stop femicides" and "You will never walk alone" as representatives of women's rights groups delivered speeches. The rally, titled "We Won't Give Up on the Istanbul Convention," arrives ahead of the formalization of Ankara's exit from the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, better known as the Istanbul Convention. Turkey's withdrawal from the convention sparked heavy criticism from Western allies and will be finalized on July 1st, when women across the country are set to hold another protest.
Our hope is always rooted in our struggles, in our organizations. Today, women came from 70 provinces to form our processions. We believe in the strength of our organizations, and whether the decision is overturned or not, we will continue our struggle in every way possible. So far, we have always managed to make them back down, and I think they will have to bend again, because this time, the women are very strong and are acting together. All women are asking for only one thing: that the withdrawal of the Istanbul Convention be annulled and that the convention be applied effectively.
In Poland, the largest gay pride parade in Central Europe have taken place in the capital Warsaw on Saturday for the first time in 2 years since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. Thousands of people joined the parade and were cheered on by others waving rainbow flags from their apartment balconies. The joyful and colorful celebration was tinged with fear of what future holds for the rise of gay men, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgender people after setbacks first in Russia and now in Hungary. The parade came days after Hungary's parliament passed a law that makes it illegal to show any materials about LGBT issues to people under 18.
I think that the situation of our LGBT community in Poland has changed for the worse. We are now stigmatized, and it can be seen at every step, in every aspect of life. We are not allowed to live normally. We have no rights in Poland, and yet we are here, and we are a large community in Poland. We came here because in Poland the situation is that there are no rights, and you have to fight for them for yourself, for others, so that you can live a normal life.
And with this story, we come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.